So we're here at RELFest 2025 in Chicago. Kelly, thank you so much for joining PLUSnxt Talking Tech interview series. I always like starting these out by getting to know our guests. For everyone who's watching, can you tell us how you got into eDiscovery, some of the things you've done, and what you're doing now?
Sure. So, well, first, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
And I mean, my first introduction to eDiscovery was out of law school as a judicial law clerk, right? So that would have been around 2005, 2006. Discovery looked a little bit different there. And I also worked for a judge that was on a criminal docket, so it's also kind of different discovery issues.
Sure.
I then moved on and I started in business litigation. So like most young associates, you do a lot of discovery work. It looked different then. We were still doing discovery with a lot of paper documents and banker boxes, but we were also, there were eDiscovery review platforms then using, summation. Looked different then. We would have everyone, when we had large projects, we'd have everyone in the firm, we'd have all the partners doing this as well, put big computers into a conference room, and we all go in and we code. And then from there, I moved more into really focusing on eDiscovery, and I transitioned and I went to Night Owl Global. I started there thinking I'd be there for about a month or two, right? Because I was kind of figuring out what did I want to do next. Starting as a contract attorney, but it turns out it was something that I was really good at, and was able to work my way up over the course of 8 years, to where I ran their global operations for managed review, analytics, and TAR. And kind of early on in those days, when they said, who's interested in this TAR thing or in analytics, I was the only one that raised my hand.
Right.
So that's kind of what got me really interested into eDiscovery and got me to stay there. And also, I think, has kind of changed the trajectory of my career by being able to do that. And that kind of led me to be able to start getting involved in thought leadership and starting to, get involved with EDRM and with the Sedona conference, and kind of seeing the bigger picture of the eDiscovery community outside of just what I had been doing, behind a computer at Night Owl. I did eventually, I went over to Norton Rose Fulbright. They initially reached out to have me help more on the technical side to help with building out their cyber incident response team. So I went there, and then I kind of switched over to going back and practicing law again. And so I've been there for about 4.5 years now. And so my eDiscovery practice has kind of shifted a little bit. So now I'm also doing eDiscovery in the realm of data breach response, but also just kind of your more traditional eDiscovery and litigation matters, and also times responding to a lot of subpoena requests.
Okay. You covered a lot there. From a standpoint of, can you explain a little bit the difference between doing eDiscovery for data breach and eDiscovery for like an investigation or litigation?
Yeah. I think with doing eDiscovery for data breach, it's a lot of rinse and repeat. There's not a lot of variability in it, right? When you're looking for individuals that have been impacted in certain personal information, it's the same personal information every time. So you really have a process set up and a workflow on how you do that. The variation can come in your data set, right? Because every data set has its unique challenges. So that's kind of how it looks on the data breach side.
Right. Do you think, I'll ask my first AI question.
Yeah.
Do you think data breach eDiscovery work is suits itself to be using some type of AI in your opinion?
Absolutely. Because I think, AI, especially if we thought about like entity extraction, I think mining data for personal information is very conducive to that, because it's really more black and white, right? It's either a social security number or it's not. Same with a date of birth or bank account number. So it lends itself well to that.
So from a standpoint, do you see your teams being, or let's back up a second, your clients pushing you and your organization to adopt more AI for them, or is it something you're trying to push, or how's that working for you?
It's been a little bit of both.
Okay.
We have had some clients that have specifically said for this contract review we're going to do, we want you to use AI. So they've been very specific about what to do. But otherwise, I've found that they kind of stay out of it, and they say, like, you're the experts, you know the data the best. Like, I trust you to do this the most efficient way possible, like the most cost-effective way possible, and to produce defensible results.
Yeah. I know you mentioned earlier that you were doing some panels here at RELFest. What panels were you part of?
Yeah. So this morning I did one on entity extraction. So it was, kind of an interesting mix to be with a couple of data scientists.
Okay.
Both on the vendor side and then in academia, and then a technologist also on the vendor side that focuses on these kind of technologies. So kind of able to get all of our different takes on how entity extraction has kind of evolved over time from manual extractions to rules-based systems, and then now to using Gen AI, where we can really start to understand context to get better results. So I did that one, and then yesterday I kind of did one more on my focus of the other side on privacy and cybersecurity and looking at the regulatory landscape, and then also kind of thinking about that through the lens of risk management. So looking at, I think a theme that came out of that was really looking at, data governance and having, defensible disposition, records retention as a way to reduce risk, particularly in the cyber context.
Yeah. I had two questions. First, from a entity extraction, is there a certain type of entity or data for an entity that becomes more difficult to extract, in your opinion, or is there some puzzle you're trying to figure out or solve for?
Yeah. I think where it's more difficult, and we just did this recently, kind of for an investigation, and we're just doing that kind of initial fact finding and trying to identify potential custodians that we may need to do collections for, and really the documents that we thought held that would have this information. Of course, they had, as luck would have it, they had really poor extracted text. So
Sure.
So just kind of those real practical realities. We of course we have tools that we could get better extractions and make that work. So using it that way.
It was interesting. You mentioned something earlier about data governance and eDiscovery and risk, and how those are all intertwined. What do you think there's a benefit of being fluent in both those areas or all those areas together?
Absolutely, because I think it helps you to see the bigger picture, and how they can work together. So you can think about your data governance and having data retention policies in place as a way to reduce legal risk, right? So if you have data that's past retention and it's rolling off, then that data is not around when the next litigation strikes, and you need to preserve and maybe collect and review and produce. So it can also lower costs, and that in that way. So kind of looking at it more holistically.
Right. Is there any session you're looking forward to sitting in on that you're not a panelist on while you're here?
Well, I'm really looking forward to the judicial panel.
Okay.
Because I think it's always fun and interesting. And I'm also really looking forward to going and doing one of the labs on relativity error and trying it out.
Yeah, relativity error for review and privilege is I think a game changer. We, to plug ourselves for a moment here, we were the first organization to receive the error for privilege competency. So we've seen it's so different. It has both a consistency of work, speed to work, completion, cost savings, time savings, the whole. I think it's going to be very different for document review in the future. From a sense of talking about AI a little bit, when thinking forward, like in 2030, what do you think a AI-enabled legal team would look like in your opinion?
Yeah. I think it's probably going to be a little smaller, and it's going to be more probably higher cost resources that are doing kind of the higher level work to interact with AI technologies. Interacting with the AI to kind of get the results that you need, and probably lower cost resources having to do, right? I think there's just going to be less first pass review, but I don't think that will go away because there's still kind of the importance of quality checking and validating kind of all the work that comes out of the AI tools.
No, I agree completely. I also think from I used to run a trial services team, some of the things building chronologies where people would spend all this time being able to do that and create a nice draft of that someone would validate. Huge cost savings and time savings abilities there.
Yeah.
And also summarizing large documents that no one wants to review, a 800-page manual, right? Those type of they seem kind of niche, but if you have to do that work manually, it's such a cost and time spent to do that work.
Yeah, that's how I've been using Gen AI a lot. It's kind of in these smaller, low-risk use cases. We have at our firm, we have Harvey and co-counsel and co-pilot.
Okay.
But I use Harvey a lot, right, to summarize. I might do some case law research, maybe with or without AI.
Sure.
Feed in several cases and kind of prompt it to create an output, a table kind of for what I'm looking for. So I use it that way. And I also oftentimes use it just in editing my own work. Where I'm not quite happy with maybe an email or something that I'm writing. And so kind of saying, here's what I'm looking for. This is what I want it to sound like. Revise this email, revise this paragraph. And then I can kind of pick and choose from what they suggest to incorporate in my final work.
Yeah, no, I think all those are great use cases. I've been using Copilot and Gemini to create modify data files, things that I used to have to do using Ultra Edit or other tools, right? And you're like, oh, I can do this now. Sometimes there's limitations on how big of a file or something like that, but it's just very interesting, the ability to do that type of work so quickly. Well, I really appreciate your time here at RailFest 2025, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and it's great talking with you today. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.